to our video on circumference. And the idea of circumference, right, is right here in the formula. It says C equals 2 pi r. What does that mean? Well, C is circumference. That's the distance around a circle. 2 pi r means 2 times pi times r. What does that mean? Well, 2 times pi, what's pi? That's about 3. So this is about 6 times r. Well, that says the circumference is what? Well, take the radius and multiply it by about 6, and you'll find the circumference. So let's look at this problem and think about that. The diagram below shows the path of 2 riders on a merry-go-round. So here we have, right, path A, this smaller circle, and then path B, this larger circle right here. And the paths here are just the circles themselves. I don't think we're dealing with the space in between. And what do we want to do? How much greater in feet is the circumference of path B than path A? Okay, so let's find the circumference of each and then compare them, and maybe we'll even see a nice observation. Well, path A, the circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius, which is 20, times 20. Now it says here, leave your answer in terms of pi. So that means when you have a number multiplied by pi, just leave it. So here I'm going to multiply the 2 and times the 20. All right, I can multiply these in any order I want, which is 40 times pi, or 40 pi. So the circumference of the small circle is 40 pi. For path B, the larger path, the circumference equals 2 times pi times 35, right? Because the radius of the bigger circle is 35 feet. And that's, well, here 2 times 35 is 70. Oh, so the circumference of the larger circle path is 70 pi. So how much greater in feet is the circumference of path B than path A? Well, one way to think about this is you can just take 70 pi, the bigger circumference, and take away the smaller circumference, 40 pi. Oops, sorry about that. So how do we do this? Well, 70 times pi, you could think of that as having 70 little pies, right? 70 of them, a whole bunch in a bag, right? Minus 40 pies, right? So another bag full of 40 times pi, so 40 pies. So you can think 70 pies minus 40 pies, what's that? That's 30 pies. So the difference between the two is 30 pi. It's interesting. I want you to think about why that makes sense. If here the radius is 20, and this radius is 35 feet, right? The difference between them is 15 feet, and the circumference has a difference of 30 pi feet, and there's definitely a fun connection there. I'm not going to get to it right now, but I'll leave it to you to think about that. Maybe we'll talk about that in other videos, about as the radius grows, how does the circumference grow as well? Like, what's happening? So anyway, that's something to think about. If we're confused on this point right here about how to do this, sometimes I think about something like 3x minus 2x's. Same idea, it's just going to be 1x. And the idea being, well, if you had 3 times 2, for example, minus 2 times 2, you could just think of that as, well, here we have 3 times 2, which is, right, what's that? Well, it's 2 times 2 times 2. Right, 3 2's, minus 2 times 2. Well, you can just think of this as saying, well, here I have 2 2's here and 2 there. I'm taking them away, there's only going to be 1 2 left over. So if I had 3 x's and 2 x's, there's only going to be 1 x. So if there's 70 pi's and 40 pi's, what's left over? 30 pi. I hope I didn't confuse you there, my little analogy. It's crunched down here in the corner. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about why this makes sense in other videos. But basically the idea is, if you have something like 70 pi, and you're taking 40 pi away, you can almost just think about this in terms of these numbers right here. Right? The pi itself is not affecting the situation, so we have 30 pi. And that's a nice way of thinking about this kind of a problem. The next problem, Gunther drew a circle. The radius is 20 inches. Let's sketch this out. the radius is 20 inches. Okay. He uses the formula below to determine the area of a circle. So this area equals pi r squared, which really means pi, and then like this, right? You want to square the r first before you multiply it by pi, or you can think of it as pi times r. So what do we do? Leaving our answer in terms of pi, this is nice because all we have to do is square 20, right? How do we do that? Well, 20 20s is 400, and you can think of it as 20 times 10, which is 200, right? Twice, plus another 20 times 10, another 200. That's going to give us the answer here, because instead of thinking it's 20 times 20, you can split this 20 up into two tens, and then add up those two sums. So here, our area is pi times 400, or 400 times pi, which we have as choice D. For our last problem in this series, we have a problem that says, the workers at Johnson Farm are creating a circular path that will be used to give pony rides. A diagram of the path is shown below. What is the circumference of the path? Leave pi in your answer. I guess they mean there, leave your answer in terms of pi, and you can see that here, 7 pi, 14 pi, 28 pi, 56 pi. So the circumference is 2 pi r. I just think of it circumference in terms of diameter sometimes. We could say on the one hand that you take 2 pi times the radius to find the circumference, and we could do that, right? The radius is what? It's 14. So we have 2 pi times 14. Multiply the 2 by the 14 first and get 28 pi, which is my answer here. Choice C, that's the circumference. Or I can think of this as diameter times pi, because remember, 2 radiuses equal diameter. So if I think of the diameter of this shape, which is just another 14 feet, so 28 feet, I just say, well, circumference is that length, diameter, times pi. So, and we get the same answer in both ways, but sometimes it's just easier to think, well, if I take my diameter, right, it wraps around the circle about 3 times, so that's my circumference. Anyway, this is introductory video. I hope it helped.